Hi, this week I'm talking to Tapere Ariki-Hewett, who I've worked with for quite a long time actually. She's just moved out of our unit, unfortunately. We were very sad about that. And she is currently the manager accounts receivable for the council. Before that, she was a team leader of the Central Incidents Team and the Resource Consents department in the compliance unit. It's terrible when I try and explain my job, it's so long. Before that, she held various positions in credit management teams, and she was even in the police. She can tell you how long she was in the police for because I forgot to ask her. But on top of all that, she has 3 children and a husband. She manages 7 properties that they own. And she's just completed her MBA. Now, you tell me how she managed to fit all that in because I have no idea. So anyway, welcome, Tapere. And just tell us about how you managed all that and, you know, if there's anything that came up that were problems and how you overcame them. But it's up to you. Just tell us about your life. Okay, over to you.
Thank you. So just in terms of how I managed that, I'm very fortunate that I've got a great support network. My husband is amazing. He has always encouraged me to, to look ahead and strive for my goals. And my mother, of course, has helped me in that space. Just going back a bit, starting from the police. So this has always been a childhood dream, and my residential property investments, that has always been a childhood dream as well. So when I was younger, when I was around about, I think, 10 or 11 years old, I always said to my parents, my father in particular, that because he is a property investor as well, I always said to him, Dad, I want to beat you. I want to get, I was like, when did you get your first house? When did you buy your first house? And when did you buy your second house? And and he said it was well into 25 years old, and I said, okay, well by the time I'm 21 years old, I'm going to buy my first house. By the time I'm 25, I'm going to have 2 houses. So this was me as a child, really. Yeah. And then I knew that I was going to work in an office. Back then it was, I just wanted to dress up and work on a computer because that's what I thought people in offices did. And then I said that I wanted to be a policewoman. My father was a fireman as well, so a lot of influence came from him. And so I have pretty much accomplished all of those things, initially without education. So I didn't pass school C. I didn't, I wasn't educated at all. I left school at 16 years old, went to work for a debt recovery agency, had no idea what I was doing, but I was very keen to learn. I was keen to learn how people got ahead in life at such a very young age, but it was because my father was highly influential in that space. He's not an educated man as well. But he had accomplished so much in my mind that I wanted to better myself like he has. When I go back further, my father came to New Zealand and he couldn't speak English. He was introduced he met this guy called Alfred Barker, European man, who actually taught him. He taught him the value of money, taught him how to budget. He taught him how to dress, when you go to interviews, that sort of thing. He was very influential in my father's space. So, and then obviously my father passed that on to myself and his children. So moving on, I got my first office job and just really was interested in how it was how I could achieve my property investment. So I'd achieved working in an office. I was so young that I just didn't really know what that meant. All I knew was that I had to save some money to buy my house. And then because I was 16, I was working a lot alongside a lot of older people or mature people, and they had families and they had bought property and that sort of thing. So I was quite interested to know how they did it. At that time, a lot of them were saying, "Oh, you're too young. You know, you're far too young to even be thinking about that. Why don't you just go out and travel and enjoy your life?" I never wanted to travel. That wasn't my, it wasn't anywhere on my list. I just wanted to buy a house. And my father had always said to me, if you get your own house, you won't have someone telling you what to do, and you won't have someone increasing the rent constantly, and you just never know where you're at. And you don't want to be paying somebody else's mortgage off. So do something for yourself and for your future. So that's where the property investment thing started. And so I bought my first house at 21, and and the second house at, I think, 24 years old. But that's when I met my husband at 22 years old. I'd had a child in a previous relationship. And I was very fortunate that my husband was, he was a great friend of mine anyway beforehand, and he took us, I wouldn't say he took us both in, but he welcomed my own child as his own, and he has done for, she's 18 years old now, so he is the father to my child. And then from there, I said, when I met my husband, I met him at 16, so we were best friends. But when we got together, he said, "Look, let's move in together," that sort of thing. And I said to him, "Well, there's some conditions to moving in with you, because I want to buy our own house. I already had my own property rented out, but I said I want to buy a house with us and live together. I don't want to live with your parents." And so my husband was used to going out and spending his money and that sort of thing, and so his whole lifestyle had to change. I already had a baby, so my lifestyle had changed anyway. And then he was ready to settle down, and so we moved in. We had a goal to save within, I think the goal was a year, 12 months for our deposit. We ended up doing this within 8 months, and this meant so much sacrifice. Everything, the budget was right down to, the rim. Sometimes we had like $20 for the weekend just to entertain ourselves. So what we would do, we would make sure we'd eat at home, but we would take my little one to the park and, have fish and chips and that sort of thing. And, so making sure that we were still conscious of achieving what we needed to achieve. So that's my life. So 8 months after, my husband and I bought a house, and then we've just really built from there. Property investment is my passion, so I'm constantly looking at the housing market and that sort of thing. At the age of, I was discussing this with my husband last night, but at the age of 37, we had 11 residential properties.
Goodness.
Around New Zealand. Yeah, we had 11. And we have only really downsized because I guess we changed our strategy. I wanted more quality properties that we could hold for the longer term. And also we bought our dream house last year as well. So so I'm really proud of our achievements together. Very lucky. And then when I went into the police as well, it was hard for me. I had lost, I was quite big, and I remember, going on this course to pass the police exam and the fitness test. I was, I was well overweight. So we had to trial to get onto this course, and I just remember running. I was the last one coming in, so we had to do this 2.4k run, and I was so big. For me, I was so big, and in comparison to there was two other women that were running, and they were ex-army women.
Right.
And so anybody would be quite intimidated and quite put off by, and they'd automatically probably want to quit. For me, I didn't. I just shut them out. I came last, and when I came in, it was so I guess when I look back now, it was just, at the time, was I embarrassed? No. Everybody was clapping when I came in, but I never stopped, right? So my mind was set to just go right to the end, don't worry about anybody else, just get there, and prove to them that you can actually, you know, I'm capable of completing this, or being picked to go on this course that was actually run by the Central Police.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anyway, I got onto this course. It was a 14-week course, and I'd lost 25 kilos, and that was pure dieting, running. I was running twice. I had to do double what everybody else was doing, because yeah, they were running, you know, and I remember just connecting with the right people, the police trainer, and you know, we used to go. I hadn't even been for a 5K run ever. And he just said to me, you know, the trick to running is just don't stop. Just if you feel yourself getting really tired, just slow down and just, you know, just keep jogging. Mm-hmm. And so I went for my first, his name is John Costa, I went for my first 10K run, and he said to me, if you stop, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it into the police. I'm telling you now. So he said to me, all you need to do what I say, just, you know, if you get really tired, just slow down. I don't care how slow you go, just keep, you know, that jogging motion. So yeah, my first 10K run, he stayed with me all the way, and for him being so fit, that must have been really, really hard. But he stuck with me all the way right to the end, and at the end he said, you're going to make it. You know, you're going to make it into the place, I'm telling you now. And I did. By the end of that course, you know, just prior to actually sitting the exam, I was running up with, you know, with everybody else, because I was doing double, having to put in double the effort. And, you know, in the interim, I was actually losing weight, eating properly, all of that. So yeah, and then I entered the police force, and yeah, great job. Met some amazing people. Extremely, well, back then it was very male dominated, and it still is in some points, in some parts, but yeah, I met some really cool people.
How did you cope with that, the maleness of the police force? You know, did you come up against any problems?
Well, I've always, because I've got 3 brothers, I've always been around males anyway, but yeah, there were some instances where I remember one guy, when I went out on, it's called scope. This is the stuff that you have to do prior to getting into the police. So you go out with the police for about 40 hours, and I remember this guy saying to me, he said to me, oh, there, you're going to have to jump the fence, you know, and he sort of stood back and just waited to see whether I would do it. Yeah, and for me it was like, okay, well, you first, and then I'll jump, and then when I jumped over, he was just like, oh, okay, well, she can, you know. It was just the way he said it. It was like he was waiting for me to fail.
Yeah.
You know, which was really annoying. And another incident, because I'm very vocal anyway, so as you know, Janet, and I remember crossing paths with a guy who, they have this culture in the police where, you know, you JB, junior boy, and you know, when you start, you've got to make all the coffees and that sort of thing. And I just remember thinking, you know, how disrespectful and rude. You know, some people would be like, well, you know, JB, you need to make me coffee. And I thought, I'm not going to have people talk to me like that's unacceptable. But anyway, I, you know, went in there. If somebody asked me nicely, can you make me a coffee, I'd make them a coffee anyway, not because I'm JB, but just because they asked me nicely. So I remember this one guy who was quite arrogant and said, hey, you know, I need a coffee. And I just remember turning to him and said, when did your last slave die? You know, and he just thought, you know, you can't talk to me like that. And I said, don't you bloody dare speak to me like that. So, you know, I think from there, people just knew that just the type of person I am, I guess, and that's just unacceptable. And it still happens today, in particular in the New Zealand police, and it's really sad, to be honest. So, yeah, I was just very fortunate that, I was a mother at the time anyway, and, a lot more mature than most, and had the guts to actually say something.
Yeah, it must be tricky if you haven't got the guts to do that, if you're a young female in particular.
Yep, for sure. So, yeah, and some people, and not just, I'm not just talking about women, but some people just, accept that that's just the way it is. And, unfortunately that happens in most organisations as well. So for me, it's just thinking about being respectful to people, and it's not acceptable. And I don't care what your culture is, that stuff, expecting your junior person to, if anything, it should be the other way around, like the existing senior staff welcoming the newbies on, and making them feel comfortable in that environment. That to me is really important. It's about connecting them and not making them feel like, you're already going through a lot of anxiety anyway, because you're brand new and going into this job, so why make it more difficult for people, right?
So how long were you in the police?
I stayed in the police for 3 years. So great, great people. Like, you meet so many really cool people, and some of them are my best friends now. We're still very much connected. I soon realised in the police, so once I'd worked in the private sector and, in leadership roles, and when I got into the police, I started from the bottom. Well, everybody starts from the bottom, right? And you've got to do 2 years as a probationary constable, and then, once you're made a constable, then you move on. So for me, it just you had to do your time to get anywhere, to move up. And again, for me, that was not where I wanted to be. I wanted to, I looked at being a sergeant, but I had to, do years and years and years, and there were so many people well ahead of me. And I'm a very impatient person, and I didn't agree with the with the way the structure, in terms of how you progress. I didn't agree with that. And, it's almost like you have to, when you do your time, then you become a leader. And, that's not necessarily what makes a leader, right? So sometimes you really had the blind leading the blind in some cases where, because I'd had experience in leadership, and I was thinking, well, I was questioning a lot of things that, some of the sergeants were asking their staff to undertake, and, things like just things that, I guess, as a woman, as a mum, managing children at such a young age. I remember, one sergeant saying, "Oh, Tapere, you'll be working in the Balmoral office." I live out west. My station was actually Avondale, so I had to travel extra to get to Balmoral with only 1 day's notice, and that really affected me, the fact that they just, I couldn't actually have a conversation with them. This was just how it was, and it still is today, and I just found it just not very accommodating at all to myself and my family. And it is because, it has been mainly, a male-dominated environment within the police. And, But one thing I must say is one thing I have experienced, and I thought it was very unusual, is that I found a lot of policewomen, they try and sort of act like one of the boys.
Yeah.
I still wore makeup, and I was still a woman in my mind, and I didn't yeah, I didn't want to try to be like them because I had something different to bring to the table, a different perspective, and yeah, and they needed to appreciate that. And I was very fortunate that I had had a few sergeants, but one sergeant who was a lot older, been in the police for a very long time, great guy, really understanding when it came to, to my family and, yeah. So Bernie Coop, he was really cool.
Yeah, it is. In those sorts of environments, you find that quite often that women feel forced to try and be like one of the boys. And it's really, as you say, standing up for yourself and saying, but I've got different things to bring, and you need to appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no way, for example, we are not, I remember one guy just having a crack about, women wanting to be equal and that sort of thing. And so, they can get in there and try and fight off an offender and that sort of thing. Well, we all know that we're not as physically, strong as men, but in terms of communication, we can talk. I experience that, we are better at talking people down in the police, and so communication was really our advantage, as women. Well, what I found, so I was very lucky in that space that I was able to resolve a few situations without even getting into the physical side of things. I didn't need to. And also just being a Pacifica woman and, being brought up in a, I guess, lower socioeconomic environment, I could relate to some of the situations that we came across anyway. So, and it was about just stepping back, just listening to what people had to say and, and not necessarily agreeing, but just understanding what their story was behind, why they did what they did. And so then I decided to take leave without pay from the police. Again, being really impatient, I just thought, no, I could do a hell of a lot better in the private sector. And then I went back to credit management, went to work for Negotiations New Zealand, became a credit manager for them. I went to Cellnet New Zealand as well. So I guess moving around, back then I didn't understand why I kept moving from job to job, and I thought, oh my goodness, something's wrong with me. So I'd stay in jobs for 2 years, and my father would be like, you're moving again, and I, back then I was thinking, yeah, I'm bored, and I just wanted more, and then I ended up at Auckland Council.
Okay, so you were in a credit controller with Auckland Council. How did you end up in the incidents team, in the central team?
Okay, well, funny story that. So when I was credit controller, I'll just go back to when I was a credit controller, 6 weeks later I became the senior, I applied for a senior role that became available for the credit team, and I was successful. And then I had, probably about 6 months later, I applied for the team leader role, and I was unsuccessful, and really, really disappointed that, I'd made some really big gains, some huge gains for our finance division, and unfortunately I didn't get the role, which was absolutely fine. But I found it really hard, so I didn't cope very well, went on holiday, came back and regrouped, and then decided to look elsewhere. So at the time I had been, I guess I was responsible for stakeholder engagement between finance and environmental services, I think it was called back then. So it's our regulatory services. So I had met a few of the heads of departments, and and they knew me, they knew my background, and I'd done some great work for them, and a job came up and they said, hey, would you be interested in having a look at this role? So I applied as the senior investigator. What was the team called? Enforcement team, I think it was called.
I think so.
This is when bylaws and resource consents were joined together. So yeah, I didn't have much experience I didn't have any experience in Resource Management Act at all, but I had experience in putting together prosecution files, attending court investigations, from the police, and executing search warrants, that sort of thing. So I had that as well as my leadership experience. At the time, I remember that particular team, what they were looking for was somebody with leadership experience.
Yeah.
And I was appointed that role, and that's how my journey began. When I started, I remember this woman, who I won't mention, but I remember this woman coming up to me and said to me, "What degree do you have? What are you qualified in?" And I just said, "Life, honey. I'm qualified in life." And I was so annoyed that there was so much emphasis on, you needed a particular degree to enable you to do a particular role. In some cases, absolutely, I do agree, but I've just proven that you don't. I've been in that division for it was 7 years, I think, and and at the time, my experience had paid off. Because I was a police officer, and although it was only short-term experience, but I had gained a lot of knowledge from that, and my leadership experience, and just my experience in being a mother, that enabled me to undertake this role. So so I became quite curious as to why it was we had to, why it was so important to have this, to have a particular degree. And I did become very, very insecure because I was surrounded by people who had been to university. Yeah. Just prior to that, I had completed, by correspondence, 2 papers because that's I guess a prerequisite to becoming a actual constable as opposed to a probationary constable. Right. You have to finish, you have to complete 2 papers, criminal law and psychology, I think through Victoria University. Mm-hmm. And so I'd had a taste of university anyway. So anyway, that was, I experienced that in my compliance role. And I was very fortunate that I had a really good manager that was able to, just leave me to it, let me structure how I wanted to structure, and and had very challenging, some challenging staff, male staff that I had to deal with, and as a senior investigator, which was really unfortunate, but in fact, one of them came to my farewell, which I had 2 months ago in the compliance division, and he really, he just said to me, "You've come a long way, and you've had to put up with so many challenges throughout your time here, including him when I first started," and he said it wasn't. It wouldn't have been easy for me to put up with him, and he said, but I just never stopped, and and now we're good friends. So my journey, within resource consents compliance has been challenging, because at the time, when we formed this compliance unit, which I think is about 3 or 4 years now, three years.
It's coming up to 4 years.
So again, at the leadership table, I think the majority of the time I was the only female. Yeah. And so constantly having to to voice my opinions on certain issues was really challenging. I remember one example, which is quite vivid to me, is one of the team leaders wanted to bring in something really simple as ID cards, right? Which is absolutely fine. Mm. So when you're out on site, you could easily identify who you are and that sort of thing. I had no problem with ID cards, that was fine, but he wanted everybody to put this ID card on the, on your breast, like this area, and didn't understand why I wasn't happy for ID cards to sit there. And, it was like, oh, Tapere is just worried about the way she looks and that sort of thing. And I didn't actually say anything. I just thought, I'll just let it sit. And I remember, a colleague of mine, who's actually a friend of mine, Joss, he said to me, I get it, Ta, I get it. I get what you... I said, I don't want people having to look down at women's breasts and, women feeling uncomfortable. For me, I don't, it doesn't bother me at all. But for other women who it might bother them if they're, heavy-chested and they are expected to wear this thing, it's completely inappropriate as far as I was concerned. And the fact that the majority of the room just didn't get it, just really blew me away, and it was really sad.
That's just a classic of why that sort of unevenness is wrong. You need balance between the genders and in a leadership team, something like that. Well, of course, it's worse now because you've left. But anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And absolutely. And, I used to wonder about, what was their strategy to enable bringing, to bringing women through. There was no strategy at all. And the more I pointed it out, the more, I guess, annoyed I became at the lack of, understanding or empathy towards, how I was feeling as a woman and the only woman representative at the table. So that was really, really frustrating. Just frustrates me every time I talk about it.
Yes. So you've moved on again. Oh, in the meantime, you decided you would go and study.
Oh, yes. So I was very fortunate to be within council. I was chosen, myself and another guy, Leah Ken, we were chosen out of, I think, how many Pacifica within council? Around, just about 2,500 Māori Pacifica within council. So we were chosen to attend this senior leaders course in Wellington, sponsored by our Auckland Council Executive Leadership Team and run by the Ministry of Pacific Island Affairs. So I've been chosen for this course, and I was thinking, wow, I have no idea, and I remember attending this course and connecting with so many smart Pacifica people that we just never hear about these people, and I wonder why. And I connected, I was the youngest on the course, and thinking, I have no idea what they're talking about. A lot of them were, one was a area commander in the New Zealand Police. So they were taught, and we had advisors to politicians, a lot of people in the healthcare industry. So some of the stuff that they were talking about was very high level to me and very strategic. And at that time, I had no idea because I'd only been working at team leader level, and I'd never been exposed to that sort of thing. And they were on a lot of governance, a lot of boards and that sort of thing. And I was thinking, what is that about? So when I attended that, so it was a 9-month course, there was a lot of learning for me, but, I couldn't help to think, oh my gosh, sometimes I just went home like really exhausted, not really knowing what the conversation of the day was. There's a lot of debate around, politics and stuff that was happening, within the New Zealand economy, and, and that was all way above my level. So anyway, I remember having to give we all had to give a presentation on our leadership journey, and I was listening, I remember listening to one woman who, I think she headed MB or one of those places, and I just thought, what would they want to know about me? I don't have a story. And so I just remember feeling really nervous, thinking, I've just worked in, at team leader level, credit management level, which is team leader level, and what do I have to offer? So anyway, I put my story together, and it was so funny because I got a standing ovation, and because I talked about my journey from, being a Pacifica woman, starting out, being very driven to achieve my goals, and, property investment, and, working in an office, that sort of thing, and not accepting no for an answer. And they were quite intrigued that someone like myself was, because I was younger, was so driven to, move forward in property investment and leadership, and then I remember saying at the end, so I wanted to achieve, at the end of my leadership journey, I said to them, I wanted to achieve, I wanted to pay off my mortgage by the time I think it was 40, I said, but I achieved that earlier than what I had said to them. And I said to them that I was going to start study. And I said, I'm not going to say what study I'm going to start, but it is going to be something in the business environment. And from there, that conversation led me into the MBA.
Right.
So I was very fortunate that there were some people from the universities there, and straight after they came and had conversations with me, and they said, oh, what are you thinking? And I said, Bachelor of Business, maybe, and a few of them said, well, actually, no, I think you should have a look at the MBA, because you've been in the workforce, you've worked in that environment for, for a very long time. You've been a leader for over 10 years. So, I think you'll meet the criteria. So, they helped me through that process, and then I started my MBA at AUT.
Yeah.
So I started at AUT part-time, and I did my first paper. So we're just taking it paper by paper. It was the post-grad.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did my first paper, and I did really well, organisational behaviour, and I thought, wow, I know about this. This is the stuff that I do every day, and I was actually doing assignments on my teams. And then I moved to the next paper and thought, oh, wow, okay. And then I thought, well, this is going to take too long for me to complete. I need to just really suck it up and do a full-time MBA. And I heard about the program at Massey and how they support you through this whole process. And I thought, wow, if other people can do it, surely I can, I'll give it a crack. And I did. And so I did a full-time MBA through Massey University. I completed that. I only completed that at the end of March. So full-time for 2 years. And it was crazy. My life was so hectic. And like I said, I had really, really good support from my husband. Amazing guy. He just, never stops giving. If anything, I think I keep taking, which is not good. But it's, we both understand that this is what I want to do, and everything we do, or everything I do, is for my family and myself, of course. And I think it's important for me that my children see, me role modelling the way I expect them to be in life as well. Not like me, not like a crazy woman, but I just never stop improving. The way you work, the way you live, and never dwell on your mistakes. Like, identify those mistakes, understand how you can, how you could have done things better, the learning behind it, but move on. Yeah, so that was me. The MBA is very, very extremely stressful. At times I just want to give up. I just be crying and be so tired. I'd finished work and I'd had to do my assignments and, right through the night and wake up and go to work the next day. And, Saturday weekends were dedicated to my studies, because we'd have 2 weekends out of the month that we'd have classes. And then the others would be, group assignments, whatever. It would be study. And then we'd be studying for exams during the week. So it was, I guess prior to that, though, I remember on the leadership course learning about, the way you lead your team, and you should make sure your team is self-sufficient and not reliant on yourself as a leader. And I was very lucky that I had great support at work as well, with yourself, Janet. Very lucky I could go to you with for advice. And I had a great network of friends at work that actually wanted to see me succeed in that space, and and I guess for the 2 years, there are things that I could have done better in terms of, in my work environment, engaging my staff a lot more. But, I just had to really just try and keep my head above water. And that's how I survived that, Yes, I could have done so much more in the workspace. And there were so many opportunities that I turned down at work because I was very conscious of not completing my degree and giving up. And there's so many times that I was just willing to go, I wanted to just say, no, I've had enough. I'd rather go and do a project at work and really focus on that. Because although you're at work working, you're consciously thinking about your studies. It's on your mind 24/7. It's and at times it can be hard to engage with people when you're thinking about an exam you've got tomorrow or the next day, or thinking about an assignment you've got to complete. But I did what I had to do, and I got through it. And I must say, Auckland Council were very supportive of my degree and that sort of thing. And I'm very, very grateful that I had one manager, and I will name him. Actually, 2 of them. First one was Mark White, very supportive, resource consents central manager, very supportive of me. Starting my degree. And then I had Stefan Nordier, who was my compliance manager, and said, you do not give up. You just keep going all the way. You must complete this. And he was just really, every time I'd just, sometimes I'd go into his office and just burst into tears. I was tired. And, I just wanted to be honest with him, because I'm meant to be at work working, right? And I'm at work and I'm exhausted. And, and he would say to me, we're still, you're still adding value to this environment anyway. So, and what your learnings, is being, utilised within this environment. So don't worry yourself about that. Just get through this. And so I was very lucky. And all done.
Yes, I know. Congratulations. Well, Tapere, thank you so much for that. I mean, it just shows, mind you, you are pretty amazing. I don't think a lot of people could have achieved what you've achieved, but it shows just what women can achieve if they stick at it. But of course, you've had the support from women and from men. You've been quite lucky with the men that you've worked with that have supported you. So, well, thank you very much. And I guess I'll be talking to you at work sometime. So that's been really extraordinary. And and I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.